Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. I get to introduce you today to Jayelle, who feels as though her story isn't unique or special, but truthfully, how she navigated everything that they decided to do was absolutely uniquely theirs, including how they navigated deciding to have a family and who was going to carry the baby, whose eggs were used, all of it. It is a truly wonderful story. Welcome, everyone. Today, I have the opportunity to introduce you to Jayelle, whose family has gone to bed and left her up to chat with me tonight. And I just want to say welcome, Jayelle. Please tell us about the members of your family.
Hi, thanks for the introduction. I am, a member of the sort of two mums family. So that's me and my wife, Steph. We have two children. I'm currently on maternity leave at the moment with our second. And we will be doing shared parental leave. So that means my part of the maternity is sort of coming to an end at the end of the year. And then Steph will take over and have 6 months herself. So the two children, sorry, a daughter who's 2.5 and a son who's about 6 months now. That's us.
That's amazing. And you are based where? Accent suggests you're not necessarily from Canada, but you're not in Canada either, are you?
No, that's right. This noise of an accent of mine always points people off where I'm based. It's a bit of a strange one, but we currently live in Liverpool. We've lived here for about 6 years. And prior to that, we were living in Cardiff for about 13 years. But yes, I'm from all over the place. So UK based, with a very strange accent.
No, it's perfectly perfect. Tell us about the decisions that you made. So you and Steph went through the process to decide to create a family, and that's just the first decision that members of the queer community make. And then we decide who's going to carry and who's going to be providing the sperm and where we're going to go to do it. Are we doing it through a clinic? Are we doing it privately? Maybe start at the top. Can you tell us who made the decision, who was carrying, and how you went about your collecting your sperm?
Yeah, so Steph and I had been together sort of a long time. We've been together about 14 years now in total. And we were on the sort of same page in that neither of us had kind of grown up thinking, oh, by the time I'm X age, I want to have 2.4 children, etc., etc. It was very much something that was born from being together. It was something we wanted to experience together, and make a family. That kind of taken the pressure off. It wasn't, we were just living our lives and enjoying our sort of like couplehood. And then we almost felt spoiled with our own sort of time. I'm sure you've heard the phrase dinks, double income, no kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We were kind of enjoying that for a while. And then we kind of got to that sort of crossroads where, shall we, shan't we? And we absolutely, went all in and said, yeah, let's do this. And just making that decision alone sort of was exciting and terrifying.
Right. It is.
And as much as we could have imagined a very full life with or without children, I think once you've made that decision, then you know what you want. This is where you're going. And we were sort of brought up in a way where, through sort of like teenageville and all of that, before, well, certainly myself, before I kind of like discovered my own sexuality, pregnancy and how many kids do you have was almost just a given, through your sort of early adult years, it's almost treated like, oh well, be careful of it. It's like catching a cold, and it's all about the contraception and so forth.
Yep.
And then when it came to family, like actual, considering family and family planning, it was almost like pick a number. Oh, how many do you want? How many do you think? And you could, pick this, and I think I'd never considered it being a problem. Like I said, with the absence of sperm, um, we thought that's fine. You can buy that, cracking, and there we go.
Yep.
Um, so when we went, like I say, once we decided, we were older. We were technically classed as geriatric mothers,
Oh.
and which I don't mind. I've probably looked 40 for at least 10 years. But, we didn't really have anybody around us that was going through the kind of like baby phase. They'd all done it. We don't have, and so we'd watched our sort of friends' journeys, and a lot of our friends and family are straight, and they'd played the whole oh, let's see what happens, type of thing.
Mhm.
And obviously we couldn't relate at all. We were very much sort of like, yikes, it's going to take a lot of wine to wake up in a clinic. So, so it was
True.
obviously like, more plans than most. So we kind of like set about, going. Firstly, we went to our NHS trust, and it just wasn't something that sort of fits
Mhm.
what we wanted to do. Um, what was on offer was, I believe, IUI, um, but we'd kind of explored what we wanted to do, and we really like the idea of reciprocal IVF or shared motherhood or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but like I say, that wasn't something that was supported by our NHS trust at the time. And also, again, I'm sure things have changed, but we would have been considered an alternative family, and they would have insisted on us having counselling beforehand, which seems so, otherworldly now. Like I say,
Right.
I'm sure that's not the case now. So we kind of just, went to a private clinic, just found out, hey, how do two girls make a baby? Like I say, that's where we discovered reciprocal IVF. We had our sort of health checks done, and we found out my eggs weren't the best. Steph has polycystic ovaries, but it actually kind of worked in our favour, in that her, insides, if you will, were a treasure chest of eggs. So we did, really, really well. In terms of a haul, when we did the harvesting and things, we got 30 eggs.
Wow.
And that was on IVF light because they didn't want to overstimulate her. That's kind of that kind of helped us decide who was going to carry and which sort of, biological makeup we were gonna go with, because neither of us had like a huge burning desire to carry. We both felt like pregnancy sounds like the most unnatural natural thing. So
Right.
idea of being, I don't know, kicked from the inside out and fed from and lived in, and no, it wasn't something that, it was very much eyes on the prize, let's make a family.
Mhm.
And like I said, Steph's eggs were the sort of, the ones to go with, and so that kind of decided it for us. And then in terms of obviously the donor, so like I say, we used the private clinic, had everything checked and so forth, and carried on with the process with them. The donor was probably, of all the thought that goes into creating a family, was the one that we probably gave the least thought to, purely because we viewed it as sort of an ingredient. I know people view things very differently, and
Mhm.
each to their own. Certainly no judgment on our part.
Mhm.
Um, but to us, making a family and any sort of children that may or may not come from that exist because we've chosen to bring them here.
Mhm.
And so yeah, like I say, we just felt like we couldn't, we didn't really have much, we didn't really need it. We just needed sperm. That was as far as our requirement was. We didn't have this idea of any other detail. We just wanted to go for the most sort of like healthy person. Screening and things in the UK is really good. So that obviously helped.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and again, there's a limit. I believe it means that only 4 families can be helped by the one donor, which again I think is different to a lot of other places.
Mm-hmm.
And it's anonymous in the sense that when the children turn 18, they can request to contact the donor, but it can't be the other way around,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is important, or we felt it was important, because if they did have questions and then it was completely anonymous, then they would be questions that would never be answered. And we
Mm-hmm.
thought that would be more difficult to navigate than being able to sort of, guide them to, an individual that's going to provide them with the same knowledge that we've given them anyway their whole life. There's no one's being tricked out of fatherhood or anything like that. This is very much, yes, you have a
Mm-hmm.
donor, and then knock on the door, I'm a donor. There's not going to be any surprises.
Right.
Uh, but we so we get limited details from the donor. Like I said, for us, it was all about the health. Is what we felt was the most appropriate way of filtering it. We again with wine, we were discussing like how to choose.
Mm-hmm.
We thought, well, even if we found, the male sort of physical counterpart that looked exactly like me, um, and we create a child that looks exactly like half of Steph and half of me, we're still not going to have like tricked the world into thinking 2 women made this child. So it just felt like really superficial to even go down the kind of like
Mm-hmm.
physical attributes bit.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, it was probably 20 minutes at most, including setting up an account and paying. We kind of went through, and that was that bit done, and that was the kind of like first and last we really thought about it. Um, the we do have limited details. We have I don't know, like hair. I think it's hair color, height, job, something like that. There's literally like a handful of information, which we've chosen not to disclose to family members, anybody,
Mm-hmm.
purely because it's private information that's for our children. And if they grow up and they think, actually, I've got absolutely no interest in finding anything else about them, then we don't want there to already be information sort of forced upon them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also, like I say, we're very much of the kind of ingredients kind of view of the sperm. Um, and we don't really want there to be an identity, I guess, to this person. Like, it sounds very dismissive, and it's not quite how I mean to come across, but they're not a person in our lives, which I think is obviously massively different to if it's a known donor and so forth. But
Mm-hmm.
this person ultimately did a wonderful thing. They went out and did a good deed,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't for us specifically. It wasn't. I don't feel like an extra layer of gratitude needs to be bestowed upon this person.
Right.
Uh, which again, I don't know if it comes across ungrateful or whatever the words are, but it's just a means to an end, kind of.
I think that that's pretty I mean, I'm thinking of, of my wife and when my wife was going through the process before she and I were a couple, and her approach was very similar, I think. She's quite pragmatic about it. Yes, there were certain things that were important to her. She was hoping for someone who had similar ancestry to herself, and because she was choosing by herself. So she wanted someone who had similar ancestry to herself and who had a good health history. But in her mind, this person wasn't going to have a role in my stepdaughter's life. And at the time, it was considered they were all anonymous for the most part, unless it was a known donor. Now we realize that ultimately, if she wanted to find her donor, she probably could if she chose to but he's never really had any significance.
Mhm.
He's not a magical entity. He's, as you say, he what he gave was an ingredient to the whole puzzle, or the whole piece of everything that was happening. And yes, amazing, grateful, thank you, because we wouldn't have the family that we have now. But if not you, then someone else. And like it is just an ingredient, and so why give more attention to it than it necessarily deserves, right?
That's yeah, exactly where we're at with it. I mean, like I say, it was it was just something that we required, and then that was
Mhm.
kind of the end of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we are, you know, obviously like most parents, we're sort of winging it and trying to kind of figure
Mhm.
out the right and wrong things to do as we go, and just kind of hoping we'll average out on the sort of things we've done right and the things we've done wrong. But ultimately, you know, we've chosen to use the word donor. We certainly don't adopt like the dad
Mhm.
title in our household. We are raising our children to know that all families are different, not your family is different.
Mhm.
Um, and because the sort of typical makeup of a family, well, it isn't anymore. You know,
Mhm.
it's not that patriarchal setup, and so not having a dad shouldn't be any more sort of an issue than, oh well, you also don't have a sister, or you don't have a, you know, whoever, whatever.
Mhm.
It's it doesn't it's not the sort of like head of the household type big missing piece anymore. It's really not.
Mhm.
um and so, like I say, that's the way we've kind of decided to approach it. Like I say, we're, you know, we're only 2.5 years in, so we're figuring it out. But yeah, like our daughter now, she very much knows, like, oh, I've got two mummies or two mums or whatever, and that's the end of it. She doesn't sort of think beyond that.
Mhm.
Um, so plus, I mean, again, not being sort of like anti-dad, but I just feel like it does a disservice to parents that are using, you know, dad as their sort of chosen
Mhm.
title. They're not actually parenting children. You know, they're not doing the same thing as the donor
Mhm.
did.
Mhm.
You know, it's like I say, doing them a disservice to be kind of badged with the same title. But yeah, so that's kind of you know, our story in terms of how we chose the donor, and you know, what method of kind of IVF we chose.
But you raise a good point, right? When we assign the title dad to a donor, it's much like and assigning the title mom to a surrogate. They're not staying around to parent the child. And so that gives them more power than they probably even would ask you to give them in the first place. And it takes away from the role that you play, the significance of the role that you play. And so I think that I mean, people can choose to do whatever they choose to do, and there's no right, there's no wrong. But I can appreciate what you're saying in that for you, the power of being a two-mom family is that the two of you are all in. You are raising these children, you are having these children, and yes, thanks for the sperm, but you're
Yeah, but we're
that's
not.
just the role
Yeah.
you played.
But we're not missing the rest of you. You know,
Right.
like there's nothing missing from our family.
Yeah,
You know, we're very happy, and
100%.
capable. So yeah, I mean, like I say, you know, it took us probably about 3.5 3 years until our daughter you know, came along. We did suffer some losses, which I think naively, I just thought we've chucked enough sort of time, money, and effort at this, and science. Surely, you know, all the parts there, everything's
Hmm.
checked. This is, you know, like I said at the beginning, going back to that. Oh, let's pick how many, you know, kind of, you know, naivety. Um, and then it wasn't working, and we we didn't consider it not working, again naively,
Right.
and then do what, you know, everybody does and everybody's told not to do. We got googling, and I was I was getting mad at the internet. I was like not wishing, like basically, all I could read was people's stories where they'd had miscarriages and then they had the happy ever after. I was like,
Mm.
where are all the people that didn't get that? Where are them? Someone tell me they're okay. Like, and that, potentially is the path we're on. But now, we're them ones. I mean, thank God. But you know, we are now the ones that, yay, we've got that sort of happy ending. But I couldn't find enough to relate to. I couldn't find how we were meant to feel, and again through my own mind, and certainly nothing Steph was doing or saying or anything. I just felt like my grief and incapability, which is what I was feeling. I widened the sort of misery, if you will, and I was thinking, oh, I'm letting Steph down, I'm letting our, like our families down, I'm letting, like, just like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just about, oh, not getting this family anymore. It was all the sort of sorrow and the ripple of how far that had gone. Because we'd chosen very early on to share the fact that we were going through fertility treatment with our kind of immediate families, because
Mm-hmm.
two things really. We wanted them kind of along for the ride, but also because we thought, oh, let's get all the weirdo questions out of the way now, because we didn't know what
Right.
what was going to get said, or not that there's any issue. That I don't want that's not what I mean. But
Yeah.
it was unknown to everyone. We didn't have anybody in our sort of like families
Yeah.
that had experienced this before. So we honestly didn't know how things would be going.
Sure.
And it just started. I felt it was easier to kind of open the gates to sort of questions before there was an actual child there, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So having the donor dad type conversation, it's less personal, I guess, when it's just part of, and this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
But because we'd shared that, then obviously, like I said, we know we had to share the kind of like the trauma of the losses and things, and then like I say, that's
Right.
what we felt, I felt, which I know now with the other side of it, I shouldn't have felt and so forth. But at the time, yeah, I was thinking, oh gosh, I brought all this like sorrow to everybody, which what should have been an amazingly happy thing to be sharing.
It
Um,
it does carry a lot though, doesn't it? Like we assign a lot of emotion to the whole journey. And we tell the people, yes, you say that I can appreciate what you're saying, because if you share with them early and they can get their questions out of the way before the child arrives, then it doesn't feel when they ask you the questions like they're judging you. But when there's a child there and then they say, "Well, why did you do that?" then it can feel like they're judging you, even if they're not, even if they're just asking so that they can learn. It feels more like judgment, right?
no,
So
absolutely, and
that makes
we
sense.
didn't we didn't want we're trying to balance that sort of knowledge sort of pool, if you will, of well, what the difference is between like privacy and secrecy.
Hmm.
Things are secret, but we also it's our children ultimately, so they've got two mama bears. So
Hmm.
we don't want to be getting anyone annoyed by anyone. Let's like I
Yeah.
say, let's get the questions sort of out the way now.
That makes
Um,
perfect sense to me, actually. It's quite pragmatic, really, when you think about it, but you have to think about thinking about it. And I don't know that, but the other part of it is the people that you tell, the people that you are open to have asking you the questions, are the people that are closest to you, the people that you hold most dear and have the most respect for. Those, whether it's family, whether it's close friends, whatever it is, these people, they're also going to be the people that you want to have pick you up and hold you and carry you emotionally when you are struggling, when it's not going the way that you hoped that it would go, right? So I mean, that it all makes sense. It doesn't heal your heart in the moment per se, but retrospectively I'm sure you can see that more clearly now.
oh yeah, I mean, in the midst of it, I sort of, yeah, we had we had each other obviously, and thankfully we kind of seemed to seesaw in terms of downs and ups and who was sort of where. But I mean, I turned to kind of like, dark humor, if you will. I started calling my like insides the like tomb womb, because in my mind we had these embryos and we froze them at 5 days old, whatever. So I was like, they were alive until they came to me, and I know that's absolute nonsense and it's horrific if that was like advice coming from me, which it certainly isn't. But that inward kind of beat yourself up thing, that's kind of where my my brain went. Yeah, it felt like, yeah, horrible. But like I said, it was just a coping mechanism, of mine. um and yeah, like I say, thankfully, um that wasn't the case. And we've got two fantastic little mini beasts out of it.
Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. You know about babyREADY because you're listening to this podcast, so you know that we are all about queer family planning and helping you have the family of your dreams. But did you know that we don't abandon you once your baby arrives? We actually offer parenting coaching as well, and that's not just for the newborn phase, although we are there for that, but it's through toddlerhood and young children, tweens, and even through the teen years, when you need someone unbiased to lend an ear so that they can hear where your struggles truly are and help you come up with a path and a plan that feels truly right for you and your individual family. Don't hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to be there for you. Visit us at www.babyready.info for more information.
So all is well. But yeah, that's kind of like I say, our journey to getting there. We do have we ended up, like I say, with 30 eggs, 17 fertilized, and then I believe 11 ended up at 5-day blastocysts. And it took about, is it 7 till we got our daughter? Or are we on 7 now? It took a lot anyway. It was a good job we had a good haul. It's mad, all the sort of numbers and 2-week waits and all this like jargon you live by, and then when they're here, it's gone again, and you have to learn a whole new world of now they're here. Firstly you start kind of creating life, and then you have to shift to like keeping them alive. So it's you only have so much brain power to keep all that information going.
It's true, though. It's true. And it's even from one pregnancy to the next, right? I mean, you get through the first pregnancy, you have that child, you're parenting that child, and then you start the journey again. You're thinking, I
It is.
forgot.
It's insane because it's so all consuming when you're in the midst of it, that how it then is gone. Yeah, it's mind blowing, really. Um, but we were very fortunate in when we tried again with, like I say, for our son, which was a little bit later than perhaps, like I say, when we were ticking the box, how many kids, when do you want them, kind of thing. Because our daughter was born with via an unplanned C-section, so we obviously had to factor in that sort of recovery time before we start again. But yeah, thankfully it surprisingly worked the first time around with him. And it's crazy for us to think that they were little freezer buddies at one point. They were in the freezer together, and big sister could have been little sister, depending on who the embryologist could have picked and when. And um just funny how things work out. But it's fantastic. We when we brought home our son, we thought we'd completely broken the spirit of our toddler. she, she was not. She was such a loving little kid, and then she was like, "Put it down." You know, and went through that kind of trying to separate us. Like one of us in one room, one of us in the other, and things like that. And but thankfully, as he's becoming a bit more interactive, shall I say, yeah, it's turned the corner. And to be honest, she was only like that at its worst for probably like a week, but we were when you come home with a newborn and all, emotions are raging, you're not sleeping again, all of that. We were sort of like, we did sob over, we've lost our 2-year-old kind of thing. We've broken our yeah, what? But yeah, it's all good now. But again, it's something we didn't consider. We just thought, oh, what's not to love? Another little
Yes.
another little thing. So yeah, didn't consider that through the eyes of a toddler.
Can we talk a little bit about the financial aspect of things? You talked about if you went through the NHS, it would have been IUI, and you'd have had to sort of follow their protocol, but you went private instead. Is there a big difference in cost? Is there a cost still for the NHS? I mean, for those who are listening that aren't aware, NHS is the National Health System in the UK, similar to the health insurance plans that we have in Canada that give us government funded
Yeah.
healthcare.
So with the NHS, we wouldn't have had to pay for anything. Obviously, you pay, via your taxes, the national insurance, things like that. But there would have been no bill at the end of it. We were quite disappointed that they were sort of
Right.
inflexible anyway. I mean, we did shut the door on it quite soon because it wasn't what we wanted, but when we had our sort of like health checks done privately and things, and like I say, my eggs, it would have been unlikely probably to have worked. And with Steph, they sort of discovered a twisted uterus, so they said sort of implanting or putting anything back might be not as straightforward. So it almost felt like, well, with this information, surely wouldn't you consider, IVF or something else? But some friends of ours said, they'd kind of gone back and forth with the NHS, and they said you still have to go through, I think it was 6 rounds of IUI or something before they need to see you fail, kind of thing. Which again, no, thank you. And IUI, it just wasn't for us. I mean, aside from sort of
Right.
sharing, um,
Yeah.
it felt a bit ick. It felt a bit like squirt and go was kind of again what we kind of
Hmm.
called it. And it just, I don't know, wasn't for us. um,
Hmm.
so, um, but cost wise, would have been a dream if they were the same. We ended up going privately,
Hmm.
all in with sort of the uh, with buying the sperm because we used clinic, and all the IVF drugs and the harvesting, as they call it, from Steph, and sort of the freezing and my support drugs and all of that kind of carry on. In total, we probably spent about £30,000 on last count. Obviously, we've got ongoing costs for storage and things like that. Um, but yeah, that's the big difference.
It is a huge difference.
From
Yeah.
yeah. But we when we started the journey to parenthood, we'd kind of we'd looked online and things. We didn't find a huge amount of information, but we we did notice that a lot of people kind of lose themselves to the process. They end up remortgaging the house. They spend decades chasing this dream. So when we started, we said, let's give it so much time and so much money. And we were kind of on our last kind of roll of the dice. We were getting, we were there. And then, yeah, it worked, thankfully. But the money factor, again, when they're here, oh, the most beautiful things in the world, they're, priceless, blah, 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 all the parenting cliches just ringing true. Um, But when it's not working, you think, "Oh, what we could have done if we'd known, this other
Hmm.
life, that path." It required that money, like,
That's right.
so we were then facing we weren't just sort of going back to that original decision, working,
Mm-hmm.
not working. We were like, okay, not working and debt, you know, and that when we were at like initial crossroads, not where we were, you know, that wasn't a factor. um, so yeah, it was really difficult to.
Mm-hmm.
It was difficult to exist, I
Yeah.
guess, because it's such a pivotal thing. Where's your life going with kids or without? When it's out of your control, you know, like I say, the decision part's been made, but we couldn't imagine even the next 6 months. So because again, with or without kids, with or without, you know, different monetary sort of pressures, we just couldn't do it because we don't know. It all depended on the next transfer, the next, you know, the success or not. Um, and then we also have to consider our careers, and it's like it wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just said we can't put everything on hold, you know. So I changed jobs, for example. We bought a car that wasn't family friendly. Like I said, I'd moved jobs, so I didn't get the enhanced maternity pay because I hadn't been there long enough. It's almost like we needed sod's law to get it working. So,
Right.
but that's fine. We'll take it. um, but yeah, it was those things that we'd previously been kind of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
considering. Again, the assumption it's going to work, the assumption it's going to work, um, and then it doesn't. So making other steps forward in life, and
Mm-hmm.
then it worked. There's a firework on demand, but yeah, so that was interesting.
Yeah.
But that's the monetary side of it. So like I say, we were kind of stung in the sense that, like I say, I didn't get the enhanced maternity pay because I hadn't been there long enough. And yeah, we had to pay because it wasn't done through the NHS. So all adds up.
It does add up. And at the end of the day, I mean, you're right. Once we get the children in our arms, it's easy to look at it and say, oh, it was worth every penny. But when you're in the middle of it and you're not sure how things are gonna go, you're not sure how much longer to put your heart and soul on the line like this because it's taking its emotional toll as well as a physical toll and a financial toll going through it. It's a lot. It adds up. Is there any Are there any words of caution or advice that you would share with someone who's still at the planning stages of it? Wish somebody had told you before they you started.
Well, I don't know what sort of advice and what's just me waking up to my own sort of ignorance at the time, you know, my own sort of knowledge gap. But I think again, it was that I literally thought I was making a choice, and it was as simple as that. Okay, let's crack on with it. So I think
Hmm.
as much as you don't want to enter, you know, the most exciting time in your life with a sort of negativity, I think it'd probably have been a bit of a easier sort of swallow of you know of that bitter pill if I'd have even just for a second considered, oh, you know, how what if it didn't, what if, you know, what if it didn't, which I
Hmm.
didn't. I was very much, you know, the pair of us were very much in this, yay, let's go. I think we
Yes.
probably fell a bit harder, um and again, my own sort of naivety, I think, I don't know if it's changed now or if it depends where you live or what your circles are, but when I'd heard people you know, discussing like, oh yes, I had a miscarriage, you know, before I had whoever or whatever, it was very
Hmm.
conversational, and it was all, and it was just I didn't even think to be massively sensitive about it. I would literally just sort of churn out, oh, that's a shame, like, you know, like, oh, you stood in a puddle, oh, that's a shame, you know, like it was not,
Hmm.
I didn't
Hmm.
get the gravity of what that feels like, what that means. And that was, you know, a wake up for me. Not just, yeah, it's a shame it took that sort of like personal kind of
Hmm.
um you know, experience to realize that. But I think having sort of conversations with family members and friends about their sort of journey to parenthood rather than just
Hmm.
focusing on the family they've ended up with. I think I would have perhaps liked to have heard the kind of not so smooth paths. um,
I That's a good point because I think that that happens a lot. I think retrospectively, after we have our children, it's not uncommon for family members to say, "Oh,
yeah,
I had three miscarriages before I had my first," or something like
yeah,
that. And you think, oh, because we tend to think, "Oh, it's just me.
mm,
There's something wrong
yeah,
with just me." Oh, maybe not. Maybe
mhm,
there's just something in the family water.
yeah. And I think as well, if I'd have known a bit of, like, say, people closer to us sort of histories, um, I might have felt like there was a wider pool of support as well, because I know someone's been through it, or or
Mhm,
not, or even just for them to understand, like, oh, we've had the conversation and it's like very sort of sensitive to them. Maybe I'll keep this to
mhm,
myself from that person, or I don't know. Just I think,
mhm,
yeah, just kind of opening the doors to all the taboo bits, I guess.
mhm.
But like I say, I'm not sure how, because obviously you don't go, hey, guess what? We're making a family. Let me tell you
Right.
about my miscarriage. Like
Right.
it's not like an invite for that. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
so yeah. So it's not really advice. Um, but it's just, I guess it's things I would have liked to have known.
Mhm.
Um,
Fair, but it's something that some people are it then to know that, know to think about that. And okay, so should I ask my mom or my sister or my cousin or whomever? Am I comfortable doing that?
yeah,
Would I want them to know my information, my news, my story?
yeah. And also I think to also consider how you can respond to what you'll be told as well. Because like I said, I feel like I was quite dismissive, but not knowingly. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I think, maybe I just needed to show a bit more empathy. Um, but it's, again, it's retrospective. When you're doing
Hmm.
fertility treatment, it's all consuming. We
Hmm.
we thought, oh, you can, do it around your life. You can carry on. You can have children. They'll fit around what you do. Lies, lies. Just,
Yeah. Yep.
Um, just let it and consume you, I guess, but enjoy it,
Yeah.
but expect it to, I guess,
Yeah.
is what we'd probably say. Um, I don't know if there's anything else we would like to have known. I mean, again, we would have liked to have known of, the LGBT kind of parents networking and things like that that we've come to sort of see now. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I'm not sure. Again, my brain isn't my own anymore.
Fair, you have a 6-month-old and a 2.5-year-old, so and it's bedtime.
Yeah, probably something I'll kick myself over later and go, "Oh, of course, that was keeping us up at night," or something, but no.
But you've provided some insight and you've really offered a perspective that I don't think a lot of people have necessarily shared on my show, but is definitely a sentiment that's out there. And when it comes to picking donors and things like that, and just being pragmatic about the process and everything. I am just truly grateful that you agreed to spend some time chatting with me today. Before I let you go and go off to bed,
That's
can I ask you, what is your very favorite part of parenting your wee ones?
it's probably seeing the world that you have started to take for granted through the
Mm.
freshest eyes, and
Mhm.
finding yourself living in a moment a bit more, and seeing things, and for uh, seeing someone else see something for the first time and be someone for the first time and achieve something for the first time. It's all those, little moments that you just don't even clock anymore.
Mhm. It's true. It's so true. Oh, and yeah, they have that wonder, don't they? Because as you say, they're seeing things for the first time, and sometimes it just helps you slow down a little bit, right?
Yeah, but it's yeah, it's just so cute. I just I just hate how all the parenting cliches are true. All the ones I rolled my eyes over for years as I watched friends
Yes.
have families. And, why do they just stare at their child?
And now you're like,
Now we
oh,
know.
aren't
Yeah,
they cute?
yeah,
I'll just watch for
yeah,
hours.
like, yeah. So, like I say, toddler's been in bed for, I don't know, hours, and as soon as I hang up here, I'll just sneak in and look. Why? I don't
There you go.
know.
Because you can.
Yeah,
Because you can. That's why.
yeah. It's ridiculous.
Oh
Yeah,
dear.
ridiculous, but we do love it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but we also, for us personally, are glad we did it later, because of that, like I say, all-consuming factor.
Sure.
And like I said, we felt spoiled by our own time and our own kind of like options. We kind of had a lot of, we had about almost 10 years together, before, or probably over, before we had a family.
Mhm.
And yeah, we were just, like I say, spoiled. We didn't take it, again, we took it for granted.
Right, right.
Now we don't.
You will have time together, I promise. Again, someday. Just it may not be someday soon. That's all.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's cute. It's
I,
cute
I want.
watching the chaos
It is.
together.
It is so cute. Oh, yes. And together, you're right, is so great. Is so great. I want to take a moment and just thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I love hearing your story and I can't wait to share it with the world. Thank you so
No
much.
problem.
Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.